Hi guys, I'm Ski with Pete. Today we're taking a look at the Raspberry Pi 4 4GB model that I picked up from Micro Center for 55 bucks. So let's take a look at the hardware. Also, I got the USB-C power supply to make sure that it works okay. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but let's get straight to the hardware first. This is all being shot in 4K, so you can enjoy this in awesome resolution, including the resolution that the Raspberry Pi 4 does. It does 4K display out of these two ports here. So that's probably the biggest and most interesting change that's happened in the Raspberry Pi 4 is the dual 4K displays. This is HDMI 0 and this is HDMI 1. Now, we're only on the first thing that we're talking about, and already we have a little caveat to make, and that's that these are micro ports. Micro HDMI looks like this. Now that's different than, say, the Raspberry Pi Zero, which uses Mini. You can see Mini there, and Mini looks like this. So we're definitely looking at a new plug here. This being the Mini, and this being the Micro. But we'll get more into these HDMI pieces later. From the HDMI, we've skipped over the power, which is now USB-C, and that's probably the reason, that's part of the reason that I got that Raspberry Pi official power supply. We'll talk about that and these more in depth and what they mean and what they are later. Let's just talk more about the hardware first. This is the camera ribbon for the camera accessory. This is a 3.5 millimeter jack for both audio and visual. As we come around the corner here, this is USB 2. This next one over is not USB 2. They've now upgraded this to USB 3, and you can see the blue ports in there telling us it's USB 3. Next over we have Gigabit Ethernet. And then on the back here we have the pins for the power over Ethernet, and then along the back we have the GPIOs. Still continuing along the edge, we have the display. That's a display ribbon for external screens. And then we're back over at the power on USB-C. Just looking at some of the chips in the middle here. This is the new, more powerful processor. It's a 1.5 gigahertz chip. Over here is the RAM module. This is the 4 gigabyte module, but I can't tell. It's one of my first complaints about this board is nowhere on here does it say that this is the 4 gigabyte model, or at least not that I can see. There's IDs that listed as the 4B. You can see up here Model B, but again, there's no listing that it's the 4 gigabyte version, so unless I had the box, I actually wouldn't know this. Also on this board is the wireless chips. The wireless is a Bluetooth and has Wi-Fi AC, so this is a much faster Wi-Fi than in previous boards. Again, the major upgrades from the 3B Plus are the Wi-Fi, the Gigabit Ethernet, USB 3, and the dual 4K supported HDMI out, also the new power in on USB-C. Let's just flip the board over, take a quick look on the other side. Here we can see we've got the SD card controller. The SD card is the micro SD, which is the same as both the Raspberry Pi 3. You can see there. This is the 3B Plus. And it's also the same as the Zero that I was showing off earlier. That's the same module there. All right, flipping it back over, just talking about hardware for one more minute. We can see that Raspberry Pi is headed in a particular direction here. It seems like we've all gone a little dongle crazy, and what we're going to need is dongles to bring this board to life. Now, part of me thinks that what they really should have done is put on two bigger HDMI ports like there was on the 3B. That to me would have made sense if they'd, maybe eliminated the 3.5 millimeter jack. I don't know that that really serves much of a purpose anymore on these boards. Really, with HDMI audio out, I'm not really sure what it does, but there must be a reason that they chose to do this. Also, the USB-C power requires a special adapter. Now, there's been conversations out there about the USB-C cable needing to be a specific type of USB-C cable. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm sure there will be a revision to this that comes soon in the future, but what really I'm talking about is that this port now takes up to 4 amps. So it's a 5 volt, 4 amp port, and that just isn't widely available. Those don't really come on most mobile phones. Most mobile phone chargers now are in the 5 volt 1 amp, or they might be scaling, like they might do 5 volt, 9 volt, 12 volt for fast charging phones. So you can see that Raspberry Pi is starting to move away from its origins. Raspberry Pi used to be the hackers only, just grab the stuff you have around the house type PC board, and now you can see it's requiring more specialized cables, specialized power units. It's just becoming a little bit more complex. Now, is this good or is it bad? I don't know, and I don't even want to make the judgment about it. I'm just pointing that the origin point that they started with is just somewhat different to where they're arriving with this current configuration. If I had my way, there would be 2 Raspberry Pis, not in terms of size the way there is on the Zero, but one configuration that's meant for easily hackable, the stuff I have lying around the house. 5 volt, 1 amp, a bunch of micro ports, because that's what I have lying around. It would have the full-size HDMI because I already have a ton of those cables. Then there would be a premium version, and that premium version would probably look a lot like this. It would use USB-C. It would use USB-C here instead of the traditional USB-As, and it would use, these higher purpose HDMI micros. So again, this you can see that Raspberry Pi is headed on a particular journey. It's a pretty interesting one regardless. This was just a hardware review just to show you the bits and pieces that are on the board. But if you want to see more detailed projects or more fun stuff to do with a Raspberry Pi, you can absolutely go and take a look at all the other videos that I've released on my channel for Raspberry Pi, because they all use the same GPIO ports. They all have the same basic functionality, and they're all pretty awesome projects. The one thing that I will say about this Raspberry Pi 4 4GB is that the 4 gigabytes is shared memory. It's shared between the video display and between the processor RAM. So that 4 gigabytes is really needed if you're going to run this, like I am, to a display or multiple displays. If you're doing a single board project, like most of my other projects are, stuff that use the GPIOs, stuff that turns on or off light switches, you don't actually need to go with the 4 gigabyte version. You'd be just fine going with the 1 gigabyte version. Okay, just before we head out today, just take a quick look at this plug. This is the official Raspberry Pi plug. And you can see it outputs at 5 volts, 3 amp. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was 5 volts, 4 amp, but it's actually 5 volt, 3 amp. Again, that's pretty hard to find if you're just looking around your house at all the different chargers that you probably have lying around, like I do. A lot of my older mobile phones relied on 5 volt, 1 amp or 5 volt, 2 amp. In fact, 5 volt, 2.4 amp is pretty common for tablets. But again, this is a specialized thing. And again, it's not that it's bad, it just shows us where Raspberry Pi is headed. And maybe Raspberry Pi isn't really headed into the hacker universe the way they were before, but instead to create this kind of specialized tool. I don't really know. I don't really hang out with the guys from Raspberry Pi. I wish I did. Even if you're watching this, I can't believe it. But let us know. Tell us, what is the future of this board? Where are we headed? I think we're all interested to know if what we're going to end up with is a very specialized desktop unit, if that's the vision for the future, or if this is just a little diversion as we head back to a fully hacker, whatever we have lying around the house type board. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. I'm Ski with Pete. Don't forget to press like, don't forget to press subscribe, and check in the About section below for links to all my other projects. Thanks again for tuning in. It's been fun.